the hard way. Nothing's overnight. Some days you lose, some days you survive. Still strong, even moving slow. Every step counts more than you know. I found gold in the everyday, and showing up and staying brave. Still
Jerome Reynaert, welcome to the podcast, brother.
Morning.
Jerome, I've been trying to figure out how to start this out. You and I have been friends for 30 years. We went from working almost every day together to coming, like, crossing paths every 5 to 10 years. You'll always take my phone call, but you've been doing your thing. I've been doing my thing.
Yep.
I think you and I have been trying to hook up a couple times now. You said, hey, Keith, can I do it via Zoom? Probably a selfish thing. I just want to sit down and have a conversation with my buddy that I haven't talked to in 10 years. And you're busy. I know that because you're here, there's something or someone that's not getting your attention. Someone try to be respectful of your time. But I just do appreciate you taking the time to be with me.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So, brother, before we get into it, everybody that comes on the podcast gets these Still Strong hats. They're Richardson 112s. My kids tell me they're the best. When I decided to do this podcast, people that have been following this, they know what it's all about. But I literally went through my phone and just wrote down people that inspired me that are still strong, been through adversity. Right there, there's a phrase on that wall: not untouched, not unbroken, but still strong. We're going to get there. But, Jerome, there's been things that have touched your life. There have been things that have broken you, but you're still here and you have a story to tell. And I want to get to that, to one, just reminisce. And those lessons that we learned through those hardships, maybe somebody's going through it now, and it'll like help them see the tunnel or the daylight at the end of the tunnel. But before we get going, what's life like for you now? How old are you now? How many kids do you have? Do you got grandkids yet? Like, what are you doing in business and family and fitness? Like, what's life like for you now?
Busy. We've got 7 kids, 46.
What are their ages? More or less.
Emily's 24. No, 25.
Wow.
Emily's 25. Julian's 22. Maverick's 18. Montana's 15. Brody's 13. Brooke's 11. And Casey's 3.
Wow.
So Emily's got a 3-year-old son. He's a little bit older than my youngest. So that's my oldest grandson, and then she's pregnant with a little girl. So
What is life like being a father compared to being a grandfather? Have you had time to think about that yet?
Not really. I mean, because Emily's upbringing was disconnected from me for a while. You know, she came back after high school, and then her and her husband both worked for me for 3 or 4 years after that. And so when they had Jax, which is my oldest grandson, I had a baby right after that. So I don't know, it almost didn't seem a whole lot different. I mean, Casey and Jax are 4 or 5 months apart. So I kind of got a kid and a grandkid at the same time. It just kind of all feels the same.
Got it. Understood.
Yeah. Not a lot of difference, but yeah.
Family's all good. Family's all healthy, getting along.
Yeah. Everybody's doing good.
I felt like you were always in competition with me to have the most, like, more kids than me. I'm stuck at 7. You're at 7. Do you plan on keeping going? Are you gonna get that win? Or are you good just being a tie?
I never was pushing for a win. It worked out that way, so it appeared that way. But no, I was done at 2. And then all that happened. And then when I got remarried, I couldn't not have kids. It seemed like I wasn't trying. It was, at that point I was going through everything, and the last thing I wanted was another kid I needed to try to take care of. But they just kept popping like popcorn. So that was just kind of what it was. So yeah, that was kind of a running joke with you and me. But yeah, it's kind of odd that we both accidentally settled at 7.
7, they said, is the number of
It's a
perfection.
lucky number. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm done or not. If she had her way, she'd have some more. I don't mind. I like kids; they're fun. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
What's your business life like right now?
A little busier than I'd like, but good. I mean, I don't have any complaints. Just I think the biggest thing I miss, honestly, is working. Get stuck in the office, dealing with all the stuff you try to do to get other people to be able to do what you do instinctively. And I think it's the general course of that ends up diluting what we did or do in general, because the guys that are best at it advance to the next level. And if there's not somebody that's as good as they were at the level they just left, then that level suffers. And you see it over and over. And then you spend a lot of time trying to back up lesser operators, sometimes to a positive result and sometimes not. You know the drill. But you want to just go out there and do it, but you can only cover as many bases as one guy can cover. So you try to duplicate, and it's a cycle of wins and losses, right?
Yeah, you and I, and we'll get into it. You and I guess, are really competitors in business.
For sure.
So, but you're doing some other things too. Are you still doing some stuff out west, or is the framing company what you're doing now, or do you have other things you're doing?
Well, I didn't intend to come back here at all. I had kind of set things up out west to basically just do investment building out there with the boys, and we went out there, I guess they were 11 and 15. And so I figured, well, I'll spend the next 10 years kind of solving the problem I just touched on, teaching them the actual basis of it, where they actually know how to do it, not just how to perceive it, so to speak. So that was my plan. That's what I was going to do. So I built a house out there, started one multifamily project, and then when management fell flat back here, it was kind of the feasibility of that operation out there was based on the consistency of this operation back here.
Understood.
And when that consistency became questionable for certain, it's like, well, I can't keep getting deeper out here and get shallow back there. So I came back here, and I knew once I got here, the hole was a whole lot deeper than anybody else had realized.
Got it.
Because management had taken their eye off the ball at least a year before they bothered to tell me they were moving on. And so instead of the pipeline needing to be continued, it was empty. And so it was kind of one of those, here we go moments. So I decided, okay, I can't look at this like temporary. I've got to look at it like I'm all in, and you can't ever do anything halfway to any level of success. So I just started throwing everything at the wall I possibly could, and hoping enough of it would stick to keep everything above water, so to speak. And I think just a combination of timing and, providence and whatever, a lot more stuck to the wall than I expected. And so there's a lot going on. So out in Montana, I finished up the projects that were out there and put them on the market, but I'm not starting anything else out there until I have no idea when. Just trying to get things here stabilized and settled down.
We're going to dissect this from where you and I met, like all the way through where we're at now.
Mm-hmm.
But the main reason why I want to talk to you, because you just hit on a little bit. You've always been able to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
You've always been able to adapt and figure it out. And that's what I appreciate about you. And even just now, this little opening, talking about I had this going on, but I had to transition and figure it out. Like, you've always been able to adapt. You've never just laid down and given up or all right, here's the hill I die on. You've always been figured it out. I think that's admirable. I think it's honorable. I'm glad to call you my friend. I respect you for it. I know you've been through some stuff. You got what's your shirt say? The iron what?
Oh, this is the Rock's clothing brand, Iron Planet, I think.
So what's your fitness like these days? Back when you and I were hanging out, you had this expensive bicycle. I think I remember you did some triathlons. So what's your fitness journey been like, and what is it like today?
Been about as up and down as everything else. In my teenage years, I raced at a highly competitive level at triathlons. I was on the junior Olympic team from, I guess must have been 1996 through 99. Won the world championships in 99, right? Right. I guess that would have been around the time you and I were starting out and doing what we were doing. But then when I started the first business after you and I split up and I moved away and came back and whatnot, I didn't do anything from the end of 99 till probably 2004. And then I decided, okay, I'll start racing again. So I raced a little bit, 04, 05, but I think that was the first time I realized how long it'd been since I did it. And so it took me till middle of 07 to really get kind of my legs back under me with that part of life. I actually signed up for the New Zealand Ironman in spring of 08, I think was supposed to be the race. So like late 06, I signed up for it. And of course, late 06, everybody was flying at 40,000 feet and thought we were going to never drop, right? So I got into Ironman training at that point. I'd never done an Ironman before. My dad had done one, and so I'd always wanted to do one, but got in shape for it, and then the bottom had fallen out, everything so hard I couldn't go. So I didn't end up going. And then from there, I fought through the next 4 or 5 years. Didn't have any time for anything fitness oriented to any significant degree. So I've finally, I guess in 2017, I signed up for the Boulder Ironman and went and did Boulder in 2018. So did Boulder in 2018, then did the Texas Ironman in 2021, qualified for the World Championships there. Was supposed to go to the World Championships in 22 in, I forget the name of the town, somewhere in Utah. But was trying to shut that operation down and move it out west and just had too much to do, so I didn't end up going. But then haven't done anything much since then. Started after I got back here. Took a couple of years to get things sort of leveled out to where you had any time to breathe. So I started working out last summer. Figured I'd get back on track and do something. And ended up with a messed up left knee. I just had some cleanup knee surgery a few months ago. So I got another month or so of getting back from that before I can do anything too serious. So in my opinion, I'm about as out of shape as I've ever been and can't stand it. But, you get laughed at by everybody else when you have that opinion of yourself, but that's just life.
I got some questions here, but you said you're 46.
Yep.
So it takes a little longer to warm up the engine.
For sure.
But it doesn't mean that you need to stop doing your stuff. You know what I mean? It might take a little longer. You mentioned your knee. Rehab might take a little longer.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean you're done yet. And the fact that it's not off the table with you right now, again, is something I appreciate about. Minor setback, but you know what? I'm going to put it back on the table and get after it again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I had a kid that went through a lot of the low and dirty periods of my career with me. And at the time, he drank way too much, did a fair amount of other things that he wouldn't recommend, to a point that he was, at one point, he stole a bunch of stuff from me and went to jail and all this stuff. And he called me yesterday and he's all cleaned up, running his own business, did a half Ironman last weekend and crushed it. Wow. I mean, time was phenomenal for a first timer. And so, I mean, you're never down too far. And this kid was down all the way. He was down about as low as you can get. I mean, you or I, as far as I know, never had any personal bad habits to an extent that, put us underwater. But this kid had it had it from all sides.
Wow.
But you can always, like you said, it might take a little longer. You might have to dig a little harder. But, it was really good talking to him yesterday because he was one of those kids that you knew had it, but just for whatever reason couldn't get it together.
Yeah.
And when you see somebody bounce back and actually go somewhere, it's
inspiring, brother.
It is.
It's inspiring.
It's fun to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In this little wheelhouse of fitness, I've never done an Ironman. I think you said your dad did one, and it kind of like sucked you in.
Yep.
What is an Ironman? What is the prep for it? What's the parts about the Ironman that you don't like? Like for me, I think it's the swim. I think the swim would not be the fun part. But having done one, can you just walk me through the process, the prep part, like the whole thing?
Sure. So the swim is what scares most people. It's probably the thing that deters the majority of athletes that don't ever get into triathlon. They've changed it a lot over the years. When I first started back in the 90s, it was all mass start races. So hundreds or thousands of athletes, depending, would hit the beach all at once. And there's guys your size and there's little girls 96 pounds.
Got it.
And you're all hitting the water at once. I mean, it is literally like lemmings. And there was a number of people died. A number of people got beat up. It was always scary. And then in the late 90s, they started wave starting, they called it. So they would start the age divisions in sets, basically. So it drastically reduced the number of athletes hitting the water. That helped a little. But now, at the Ironman distance anyway, and with computer timing capability, now you self-seed yourself. So you enter a chute based on the time you anticipate your swim to take, and you enter the water one athlete at a time. Your time starts when your chip crosses the line.
Got it.
So all the timing is equalized. There's no rush to be the first one in the water. You're starting in at a time when all the people that swim at your level are swimming. So it really takes a lot of that scary part out of it.
In your mind, is that the better way to do it?
For sure.
Safer.
Right. If you're in the top 10% of the athletes in the race, you wouldn't care.
Right.
It wouldn't make any difference. You're going to swim out in front, and you're big enough and strong enough that it's not going to be a problem, and it wouldn't bother you. But for the safety and benefit of the race for everybody in the race, for sure. But anyway, for me, I grew up swimming, so for me, the swim is kind of a break to warm up for the rest of it.
Really?
Because swimming is mostly technique and fitness level. I mean, as long as your fitness level is where it needs to be, you're better off focusing on technique than trying harder. The harder you try, the slower you'll go.
I get it, because if you're trying hard during the race, it probably you didn't train hard enough, right?
Correct.
Like I've done this, I've trained for this, now I should just get it done.
Yep. And swimming, when you push harder, generally your technique falters and actually you slow down. So
how far is the swim? Because I've seen them on TV, but I really don't know too much about Ironman. So how far is the swim?
2.4 miles.
Holy crap.
Yep. 2.4. It's long.
Yeah, it's long. So how long does it take for you to swim 2.4 freaking miles?
Just over an hour.
Holy crap, dude.
Yep. The really good athletes will, your pros will come out in the high 40-minute bracket. The meat of the pack, I would say, is between an hour 5 and an hour 35. And then you have people that are out there over 2 hours all day long.
So to prep for a 2.4 mile swim, how many swims are you doing a week? Are you swimming what's the prep for a swim?
I never swam a whole lot. Like I said, I have a large swimming background, and it's mostly technique. And I should swim a lot more than I do when I prep. I would say a lot of athletes probably swim 15,000 yards a week, something like that, in the main part of their training regimen. I don't think I ever swam more than 3,500 or 4,000 yards a week.
Because you were naturally good at it.
No, well, I had the technique, and the time was better spent on the bike or run.
Understood.
I could develop faster doing the bike and run. The fitness lapses over, so it was just kind of like time over time value. So running, I always minimized because I've always been around 200 pounds and wasn't stupid enough to think that knees and ankles and stuff would last forever. So I ran as much as I felt I needed to. Spent a lot of time on the bike.
So hold on a minute. On the run, you're getting out of the water, right? The run's next, right?
Nope, bike's next.
The bike is next.
Yep.
You get out of the water, the bike is next. How
Yep.
long are you biking for?
112 miles.
Okay, 112 miles. To me, that feels... The swim feels more ominous than the run. I mean, than the bike, to me. The swim feels more ominous than
It's
the
just
bike
the
to
fear
me.
element.
That must be what it is.
Yes, the swim can kill you. The bike, you just
My
might fall
mind
off.
can digest 112 miles on a bike. Like, I can break that down. I can
Right.
break that down. So what's the bike ride like? Is that...
The bike is the defining piece because you can either make or break your race on the bike. You spend the most hours on the bike. You're going to be on the bike, depending on your fitness level, somewhere between 4 and change to 6 and change hours.
Okay.
So it's a long period of time. It's when your fueling is most important because if you're not hydrating or getting the right nutrition on the right schedule, you will fall apart in the run. It's not if, it's when. So how you manage the bike, and it's hard. It's always been a challenge for me because I was always real strong on the bike. But if you overplay your bike, your run will crash. So you got to leave enough on the table to get through a full marathon once you get off that 112-mile bike. So, like at Boulder, I think I biked like 5 hours and 37 minutes or something for.
So that you said between 4 and 6
112
hours.
miles.
That's an average.
Yep, right in the
That's a
middle
good
of
pace.
Yep, and really, I mean, I survived the marathon, I would say, and I did some different training when I went and did Texas and backed off the bike about 10 minutes and ended up with about a 15-minute overall faster time because it backed off the bike just a little bit and, left the ability to actually run the marathon. So, every athlete's different, but you see it if you watch the pros. The guys will go out and they'll lead the entire race on the bike, and then halfway through the marathon, they get just run right by the whole pack that was back there relaxing. So there's some strategy and some knowing yourself to it.
Do you, like the 2 races that you just talked about, and we'll move on after this, but this I love this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not a quitter, you're an adapter.
Mm-hmm.
And I equate like this Ironman that you're doing with like real life stuff. That kind of stuff carries over. Okay, so I have to adapt to this, I have to adapt to that. Can you just, in a race, maybe give me some things that you can think about where maybe you developed, say, a cramp in your calf, or where you had to adapt, and your mind, there's that. I like that me versus me stuff. That's why my fitness stuff, I don't compete with other people. I like competing with that person in my head that says, you can't, you're not good enough. Why are you doing this? Like, I compete with that person. I think you do too. So can we just kind of like live there for a minute?
Sure. Well, I mean, the competition element of Ironman is so far beyond my level of fitness in recent years or aspiration that it doesn't even come into play. I mean, after Boulder, didn't intend to go to the awards ceremony, which they do the next day because everybody's not done till late in the evening. But I happened to be walking by the awards ceremony, and they were announcing the 35 to 39 age bracket, which I was 39. And so it kind of perked up and thought, okay, I'll listen to this and see where I fell in there, right? I knew I wasn't anywhere near the, medal round or whatever, but I thought I'd just pay attention. And so they announced the age category, and they announced 5th place first up through first, and they announced the times along with it. And 5th place was like, I think, 11 hours and 55 minutes or something. And I had done like 12 hours and 45 seconds or something like that. And I thought, man, I was only 5 minutes out of 5th place. That's
cool.
amazing.
That is amazing.
Then I realized they were announcing the women.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, oh, wow. I was only a girl. I'd almost be competitive.
Wow.
So my point is, I don't race Ironman for the competition against the other guy. I mean, there's guys out there that spend their whole life. That's what they do. They have a lot of time to do it. They're better at it, whatever. For me, it's definitely the mental me against me thing, because in just about every aspect of an Ironman, I mean, you're going to go through 6 or 7 different major physical cycles throughout that day. That's 12 hours of high intensity, nonstop, no break, never off the gas. And so, your body's going to crash and recover and go through that multiple times throughout that day. You're going to have to manage every different thing. But the biggest challenge for me is, and I think it's for everybody who succeeds at it, you have to decide before you go into it. You don't know what that cramp's going to be, or what that crash is going to be, or when you're going to get nutrition off balance. You don't know. You got ideas of what to avoid, but you don't know when it's going to hit. And the whole thing is, it doesn't matter when it hits. It doesn't matter what it is.
That's good.
There's not, when you hit that wall, the question is, do I dig under it? Do I climb over it, or do I knock it down? It's not a wall. It's just that next thing that I got to figure out how to get around. And I think the correlation to life is just that.
Yes, sir.
It's preparing for it's not a matter of if I'm going to run into something difficult. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah.
And once you get to the point where you've hit the wall as many times as I have, you just kind of, well, okay, when's the next wall? And you're not even alarmed by the fact that the wall's there. It's just like, well, okay, what do we do to get around this one? And so it is a microcosm of life, if you will. But I think that's why I do it, because you're trying to find a way to challenge that aspect of yourself that isn't challenged enough, and develop it to the level that it's still there next time you need it.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff right here. There's a lot of stuff right here we can talk about. A few years ago, like every January, our family goes away for Christmas and New Year's, and kind of like when your routine stops, you just evaluate yourself. Like you're outside of your routine, and it's good just to kind of like from a different vantage point look at your life outside of that vantage point. And that's what Christmas and New Year's is for me. And I say, okay, what did I do last year that I grew? What were some things that I shied away from because I was afraid to grow? And I just give myself a diagnostic. And I always try to challenge myself. One year I'm going to run 100 miles this year. And like to get to that point, I said I have to be mentally prepared. Like the reason I'm doing this has to be a strong reason, because once it starts sucking and like, why are you doing this? I'm going to quit. So I found, I just went through those emotions for a while, and I grabbed on, okay, this is why I'm going to do this. Once that was solidified, when my wife dropped me off in Sarasota, I ran down 41 from Sarasota to freaking Naples. Yeah. And the hardest part was 2:00 in the morning, right around that, between Port Charlotte and North Fort Myers area, where there's no sidewalks. It's hotter than balls. You're running on the side of the road with all the industrial trucks coming out. There's a freaking homeless guy came out of the woods. I thought he was going to try to rape me. I couldn't even like hardly run. But he ended up being a cool dude. Like when it just sucks the most, and like you're literally peg leg walking it, you piss yourself a little bit, and you're like, why am I doing this?
Yep.
You go back to that starting point. This is why.
Right.
And that's the stuff that carries you through. If it's for vainglory, if it's for pride, any of these secondary things, you'll fail.
Sure.
Like my go-to is my family, brother. Like that's what I go to. So let's make that a little bit of a transition. You said that the Ironmans translate over to like real life stuff, and you talked about the obstacles you've been through life. Again, not untouched, not unbroken, but still strong. I'm gonna set the stage. Okay. My wife and I were newly married. We had just built our house on 8th Street. I was working for a builder that we were building houses for these Germans. Back then, the Deutschmark was like a 2-to-1 to the dollar. So these people were building vacations homes over here. And we had an in-house framing crew. When we got done framing them, I would do the tile. I would do the brick paver. Like I just did whatever. And I learned a lot. So the guy that I was working for, although he was good at his craft, he was a craftsman. He wasn't good in business. He ended up going out of business. I had a baby at the time. I went a month without getting paid. I was loyal to him because he was loyal to me. Like he taught me everything I know. He laid everybody else off and kept me with him. I was loyal to him. He cut me a check, brother, and that check bounced, which caused my house payment, my mortgage payment to bounce. So I started my own little thing, and I started like doing stuff for people, handyman business. I went through their yellow pages and I came across this Reynaert Contracting. I called this guy. He said, "Yeah, come meet me down here." I went to his office. It was your dad. At that time, your dad was getting out of remodeling. He was doing houses or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was through that low time in my life that your dad gave me a shot. And I said, "I'm just one guy." I said, "I know how to frame." He said, "Well, I got a bunch of boys." And your dad put us together.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to start there. And I want you to take over the story and steer this ship towards where you and I met and started and where you sit right now when we talk about the triathlon of life.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just go through it. Take your time, relive it,
funny.
remember it.
I didn't know the backstory of that. I know the part where you met my dad and beyond, but I didn't know, never really knew, I guess, where my dad found you or how that initial meeting happened. What you may not realize is behind that, on my side of the story, was that my dad had been a remodeling contractor. I'd worked with him. I was, oh man, at that point, maybe I was 18, maybe 19, something like that. And so my dad actually intended to keep remodeling. He was growing the remodeling business. My brother had started a new housing division and was selling and trying to build new houses. And none of it was fast paced enough for me. It was, remodeling was slow, it was boring. You're always waiting on things to happen. And the new home building business was just basically looked like glorified realtor stuff to me at the time. And it didn't plead to my strengths at all. So I told my dad I want to start a framing business. And he said, "Well, you know what you know, but you don't know the rest of it." I said, "Yeah, I know." I said, "But, whatever, I'll figure it out." And so he reached out and found you and then put us together. I think we framed the interior walls on that house over off of like 7th Street or something. Somebody else had done the lid. I don't know who he had.
Somebody else did the roof. He said, "I got this house here."
Yep.
Yeah, I remember this.
And you and me
Thank
and
you.
James
I remember
went and
this.
built the interior walls. That was round one.
Yeah.
And I was pretty good at interior walls. I built a lot of walls before in the remodeling game. But you had a process of it that I hadn't seen before. You laid out the plates standing on edge instead of laying down flat. And
Understood.
just little process things that you had that, made more sense. And I don't remember exactly what we did after that. I know we did a few things for my dad, I guess, or whatever. And then I went and contracted that big fat Ruttenberg down at Stony Brook.
I remember.
And that was the first full one we did.
Yeah.
And I was paying you by the day. My dad was, whatever. I was kind of running that piece of it for him. And I remember showing up to that pile of trusses and thinking, what in the world do we do with all of this? I mean, it was a cut up mess. I don't know if you remember that one or not, but it was, in today's world, it wasn't any big deal. Either one of us would walk up and go, "Okay, another house," and you just walk on. But back then, I remember looking at it thinking, good Lord, where do all those 4,000 pieces go together? And we were looking at the truss plan, and you knew how to read it. At least it looked like you knew how to read it. I didn't know what I was looking at. It could have been written in Chinese as far as I knew. I had never looked at a truss plan before. And we fought through that thing, and I think we lost like $800 on that job. By the time I paid you and we covered everything, I think it was like $800 in a hole. And
I didn't know that.
My dad says, "See, I told you this isn't going to work." And I said, "Well, what if we do it twice as fast? Then it works great." Well, how you can do it twice as fast? It took this long. I was like, well, we just go faster. And, of course,
That's
I
it.
had the benefit of knowing everything I didn't know coming in the front door that I did know going out the back door. I started sheeting the backside of the roof. You walked over the roof and said, you snapped a line for that sheeting, right? Yeah, sure. Thinking, I don't know what he's talking about. What do you mean I snapped a line for that sheeting? I had no idea you snapped a control line at the top of your rear sheet to keep it straight. Everything I'd done had been little additions and whatnot, so I
Got
just
it.
aligned the sheeting with the subfascia, and it was good enough because you're only putting 2 or 3 sheets in a
Got
row.
it.
So when you weren't looking, I looked over the ridge and figured out where you snapped your line, and then deductive reasoning figured out what I needed to do
Got it.
from there. And I think when we got around the corner of the house, my line was about a half inch too high or something, so it didn't match up, and you were all pissed off. But
Sounds about right.
we sorted it out. So then we did that big 2-story out in North Fort Myers for Bill Pygott. Bill was my dad's roofer. He was building himself a new house, and that one we made money on. Not much, a little bit. I don't remember exactly what. I think we made like $1,500 or something when it was all said and done. Then we did that big one out for, wasn't really big. Seemed big then, but we did that one out on St. James City for Sun
remember
Country.
I remember I had to keep going back.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and that was just the way they were. But so I learned a ton from you, which you probably realized some of it, but not all of it. I was a pretty fast learner, and you probably thought I knew more than I did, but I learned a ton framing with you in the early going of it.
So having said that, I had the benefit, like I said, we had an in-house framing crew.
Mm-hmm.
The guy that trained me was Amish, and he ran away from the Amish community. So I got a lot of my work ethic, working those 10, 12-hour days, and those are true craftsmen.
Yep.
So I was next to him. And so I knew all this stuff, I'm observing all this stuff. I know how to do it, but I always had someone there that was like my training wheels. If I get stuck, Steve's right there.
Sure.
When you and I were working, that was my first time without a set of training wheels. All that stuff, it was new to me. It's different when your mentor's not there.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I was learning too, even though I knew how to read a trust plan. That was the first time that I didn't have anybody that I could go to and ask.
Right.
There was stuff there that I know I'm supposed to know this, but you don't really know it until you don't really know what you know until there's no one to ask.
Yep.
And so that was a different experience for me.
Yep.
And I'm glad to hear that I didn't know. I thought you and I were on the same level. If I would have known that, oh my goodness, this guy didn't even snap a line. I think that would have stole some confidence from me.
For sure.
I enjoyed working with you, and I felt confident. I said, well, Jerome's got it. I felt so I slowly learned being in the driver's seat, if that makes sense.
It does. I think we both we both overestimated each other enough that we felt we could do what we were trying to do. And so, the combination of it worked out. We got through it. And, I think that in my experience beyond all of that, that never changes though. You always overestimate the other guy, and you always underestimate yourself. And a lot of times confidence is just a perception. It's not. Whether or not you should be confident is based on whether or not you're willing to do what it takes to get it right, whether you knew it or not. It doesn't really matter if you knew it, because you can know it and get it wrong.
Right.
But are you willing to do what it takes to get it right at the end of the day? And we both innately had that. We'd tear it apart, put it back together, and do whatever it took until it was right. But, the emotion of things is the perception of confidence, but it's not actually confidence. Confidence is when you actually know that it doesn't matter if I goof it up because I'll get it right anyway.
Sure.
So it's just, how many turns are in the road before you get where you're going. But yeah, it was definitely interesting time. And we kind of got to where we know what we were doing. We were building all those little 2 stories, and
That's fun.
jumping off the roof into fill piles and, being stupid and having a good time. And, then it kind of got easy for a while. But
Yeah, it was fun.
then my dad's check started bouncing and it wasn't so easy anymore.
I remember that.
Yeah, I guess that was the first bump in the road. Because, at that point for me, I got a salary check. I drove a truck that was paid for. And, all I had to do was do my job and I'd get paid and life was okay. I didn't quite have the where the rubber meets the road, oh shit, motivation that you did. Because, again, perception. I perceived that everything was taken care of behind me and all I had to do was show up, basically. But then I got a rude awakening real fast about how fast that can go away.
We were submitting bills for the framing, and the checks were coming slower and slower, and then the checks didn't come.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So, yeah, and I was, because I'd always had that family business, that father figure that had it figured out where I didn't have to. I think I kept looking for that. So I moved up to Ocala and was supposed to go to work for my then wife's father. And so I sold the house down here, moved up there, bought a house, remodeled it, got life all set up. And
do you remember when you were at that fork in the road, and I'm pretty sure you and I were both sitting in your truck, and we had a conversation for like 30 minutes or an hour. And it was like you became aware that your life is about to change and your family dynamic in business, and like where do I fit in all this? And here you and I developed a pretty good friendship. You and I,
Yep.
like, we were tight.
Yep.
And I think we had even talked about, I think you were trying to get me to, I think you're feeling me out like, hey, what about you and I starting a business together?
Mm-hmm.
And I just wasn't there. I couldn't wrap my head around it.
Your dad told you not to.
He did?
Yep. I don't remember that exact conversation, but you're not wrong. That was, to me, the whole time you and I were operating together, and I was basically paying you as a sub to, be the other half of what we were doing. It was a partnership in all fashions other than the fact that it wasn't.
Right.
But when all that busted apart, yeah, that whole time we were doing that, I was turning all the money we were making into my dad, and it was paying for the whole rest of the business.
Wow.
It wasn't, what we were doing was making money hand over fist, but it was all contributing to supporting the rest of what he was falling apart on.
Understood.
So at that moment in time, I knew the numbers real well. And I knew that if you and I had no one else to carry and we were just doing what we had been doing, we'd have been making 3-4 times each what you were taking home every week because the bottom line was healthy. But I didn't push it all that hard because the business source we had, I wasn't sure what it was.
Right.
My dad's stuff was gone. You knew a few people, I knew a few people, whatever, but it was all based on the consistency of how much work we could keep going.
Right.
And so, I'd never done it, but I wasn't bullish enough to be willing to jump out there and do it on my own. And
I think
again, it was a confidence thing. I was looking for you to back up the other half of it.
I think you had a glimpse of the vision. I think you're looking down the road, and even though the road was foggy, there was these patches in the road where the fog kind of dissipated. You can kind of see something there, but couldn't quite put it together.
Yep.
And I couldn't see it at all at the time.
I needed that wingman. I needed that other, that other little bit of confidence that I didn't quite have on my own. And if I remember correctly, I think it came down to, and for all I know, what your dad said to you, you may have simply misunderstood. But whatever all went on, you came back to me and said, my dad said I shouldn't do this, whatever. So I'm going to do my own thing. And so I said, well, that's cool. And so then that's when I moved up to Ocala.
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah. Well, I only probably remember it because when you worked with me briefly in 2006 after you sold KB, and you told me at that point that you talked to your dad again, and it kind of confused you because you said this time he told you, yeah, I think that's awesome. You should do it. And the speech he gave you back in '99 was, something about being unequally yoked, and that's why he gave you the advice that he didn't think was a good idea. And partnerships are a train wreck 90% of the time. So I don't think fundamentally he was wrong, but I've wondered over the years many times what would have happened if we'd have managed that different, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of operators out there, but none of them even come close to the volume of capability and willingness to improve the mechanism itself that you and I have both exhibited over the years. I mean, you can look at the business that we do and who we do it for and what they expect from us. And I think I can honestly say I don't get that. I know when I'm bidding against you, and I know what they expect, and they know what to expect. I don't ever get that feeling when it's anybody else on the other side of the table. And
That's
I don't know if we'd have watered each other down or if we'd have taken over the world. I don't know. But I've wondered about 4,000 times over the years.
I was thinking about yesterday. I was thinking, what would that have been like? So, anyway,
There's still time.
yeah,
I
maybe.
ain't dead yet.
So you went to Ocala.
Yep.
And you worked for your then father-in-law. Doing
Never
what?
actually
what
did.
were you doing up
I
there?
was supposed to. He had about $1 million worth of work. He was going to put a huge addition on his estate. He had a estate out on 40, 50 acres or something there in Ocala. He was going to build a new office building, and he was going to build some investment properties and this and that. And the story was he was basically, I would work for him and I'd run his construction involvement, operations, improvements, what have you. He turns out he was, was one of those guys that he was only lying when he was speaking, but I didn't know that. And so I went out there, bought a house, remodeled it, kept showing up at his office going, okay, when are we doing something? I got to generate income from somewhere. I had made a little bit of money when I sold the house back here, so I was okay for a minute, but I didn't have much. And so then he hired somebody else to do the addition on his house, which to his own detriment, for probably $250,000. And they did a crappy job, and he was whatever, it was a mess. But long story short, he never did anything. I think he paid me $150 to put new paneling in the mobile home on the back of his heavy equipment dealership lot. So I came home and I told my wife, I said, look, I'm not going to sit here. He showed up for coffee one morning. He put $4,000 on the table. And he said, here, I know you guys are having a hard time. Maybe this will help. And that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for me. I was like, look, I'm not going to sit here and do nothing, waiting for you to do what you said you're going to do, and then come over and give me money. I was like, this ain't going to work. So I don't know exactly how, but
At this time in your life, I would imagine you're like early 20s, right?
Yep, 21.
Yeah.
Yep. So somebody had screwed up a job down on Sanibel, big 12-12. I'm not even sure you didn't come help me with it. I know I talked to you about it. It was on Rabbit, the name of the road. But somebody had screwed up the roof 7 ways to Sunday. So I took a, fix-it contract. And that's when Doug came to work with me. And we went and fixed that one. I was staying in a extended stay hotel and kind of started my initial framing business there and got that. We did that one, and then I forget what I contracted exactly after that. And
I remember. So I remember you called me about that house. I didn't help you with it. You called me about it, but I was busy.
Yeah.
I was busy. And I think that next transition, correct me if I'm wrong, but that next transition is, Ocala, you're coming down, you had that thing you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was this building contractor that kept bugging me, calling me, called First Homes.
That was later, though. Yeah, there was something, I don't know what went on in between. I know I finished some houses for Ross Hooker. He had 2 or 3 things out there. But yeah, honestly, till you said the thing about First Home the other day, I didn't remember that link. I knew I went to work for First Homes, but I didn't remember you being involved in that.
I didn't want to mess
deal.
with First Homes because I was doing, like, in my mind, they were beneath me because I was doing custom stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even mess with that little stuff.
Yeah.
And I did one or two. They were bugging me. They wanted me to do more. You're trying to figure out what you want to do. I said, dude, these First Homes, dude, they're calling me, bugging me. They're little cracker boxes. Here, take them.
Gotcha.
And then not only did you take them, but you built a whole business around that volume.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, that was when I started with them, they had 17 framing contractors, literally. There was 17 different contractors that were filling that space for them. And at that time, I don't know, maybe they were doing 500 or 600 a year. They had a lot going, but it wasn't crazy. And Big Dick Lewis was the superintendent that I went to work for. And so the first one of those we did, by that time, my brother and I think my dad was back working for me by that time. And the first one of those we did was kind of similar to when you and I started out. I think it took me like 4 days to do it, and I made a couple $100. I was like, well, this sucks. It was not very good. I'm like, no wonder Keith gave me this crap. But then I just kind of thought the same thing. I thought, well, okay, if I go twice as fast, and I had that athletic background, so it was always like, okay, well, we'll just go faster, and that'll solve the problem. And so that's exactly what we did. And it took about, I think I did the first one in early September, and just before Christmas, we did the first one in a single day. So we crushed that 5-week schedule down to a 1-day schedule, or 5-day schedule down to a 1-day schedule. And at that rate, it paid better than any custom I could contract. Mm-hmm. In fact, you really solidified yourself in that custom world. You were getting a lot of that. And every time I would bid it, I couldn't get any of it because I was young, didn't really understand. And I was bidding based on, I'd take my profit margin from a first home, try to apply it to the length of time that custom would take me, and that's where I'd bid it. Well, I couldn't get anything because that was twice as much as I should have been.
Got it.
And first home actually spoiled me to the extent that it made it harder after all that went away to ever get on track, so to speak, because my perception was that you should make 150% markup on your cost or you shouldn't go to work. And I guess that wasn't real.
So you had said that how many framing contractors were they using at the time?
17.
And then I'm pretty sure you scooped up all of them, right?
By the end, it was just me. Yeah, I got 50% of it. I got 50% of their volume over about a 2-year period, but I could not get over that 50% mark. The story was that they had a hard line drawn where nobody could have more than half of their business.
Understood.
They wanted dual service providers. But what it really was the other guys were paying off all the management and license holders and ownership. When it all finally blew up and the FBI showed up was when I ended up getting all of it, and they turned over that there was, $5,000-$10,000 a week in kickback checks being written to management and everything else. And again, I was just young and had no idea that's how the game got played. I never even would have thought
You and I were
about
oblivious to all that.
Yep.
So what was like the monthly volume you were doing with them, dollar wise, like back in the heyday?
$2 million a month.
$2 million a month.
Yep. I remember one 2-week cycle. We did 1.4 and a 2-week cycle.
And you're 20-something years old.
Yep.
Yeah.
24, 25.
So here's another. Oh, this is your story, but I'm just remembering some things. So I hear through the grapevine that, First Homes, the amount of volume you're doing with them, and then we would cross paths every once in a while, and I would notice the vehicle he's driving. Like I would notice this stuff, right? And I'm sticking to my principles by doing big customs. And you talk about growing. Like I didn't go to college. I was homeschooled and I just worked. I'm literally learning on the fly like you did. And that's why I like you so much. That's why we're friends. We're figuring it out. We're adapting. Mm-hmm. So when we would cross paths every once in a while, I would walk away with a different perception that I didn't have before. and like my brain, like I would grow. So is it really important what the perception is, the type of house that you're capable of framing? Or is it how much like money, how much money you're actually making? And every time I would like walk away with you, instead of just being like a really good framer or a really good carpenter, I walked away being like, you know what? Jerome's a hard worker, like go faster. I can vibe with that. But he has some things that I don't have. Like he is learning how to run a business. And that's the part that I didn't have. You understand? I knew how to work hard, get after it, but I don't know what my margin is. You saying, hey man, if I don't make 150% margin, I don't get out. But I didn't know what my margins were. I'm just working, making a decent living. So every time I watch you, I would come across you as like, okay. And then I had my shot. So I was doing Mike Groff's framing in Lehigh. You know, he was a drywall guy building houses. He had a model center on Lee Boulevard. He sold his model center to Adams Homes. A year or two after you took over First Homes. He's like, Keith, there's this builder in town, Adams Homes. I gave him your number. Well, they're a national builder. They were like your First Homes.
Mm-hmm.
So having learned watching you and say, okay, it's about, I need to be a business person, not just a really good framer. I scooped up Adams Homes and I took some of those lessons that I learned from you with First Homes, and they were my first homes. Like I think we were building like, they paid weekly, which is awesome back then at 20-something years old.
Yep.
Like my wife's going down there every week, picking up a check for $100,000, $200,000. But it was just money to me. Like I'm just working. It was just money. Like, and even like, it really didn't translate over. She's loading all my babies up and her little minivan. Terry's like 3 or 4 years old. What day is it? Friday. Oh man, we got to go to Adams Homes again. It's too long. Like it's too far. So just like knowing you're going to be sitting here just reliving some of those memories, it was like, It was been good for me. So that's a little bit I learned from you early on, and I've learned more.
Well, I think, again, you know, I've watched you and a lot of other people, and you always overlook your own positives. You always see your own negatives. In my opinion, it's human nature. I know for me personally, the things I focus on are what I'm not doing good enough. I don't spend much time thinking about what I'm doing well, because I don't need to think about that. It's just being done and it's okay. And then you look at the guy across the aisle and you see what he's doing well, because that's what you see. And so you always, you know, you're always comparing yourself. For me, it was never a comparison to guys like you that was, you know, am I as good as that guy or is he better than me? But it was more of a comparison in the context of, what does he have figured out that I don't have figured out that I can copy? Because I was never above copying whatever you had figured out.
Same.
And, you know, but again, when you're doing that, it took me a lot of years to realize that I was only looking at the wrong side of the coin.
Jerome, for me, that a lot of that stuff translates over to that me versus me. Because when I see you, in my mind, he's doing it better or succeeding more. Am I lazy? Am I not doing it right? So it always comes back to that me versus me, fighting that complacent person. Yep. But at the end of the day, you don't know what you don't know, and you're learning stuff every day. And I learned a lot from you when it comes to how to run a business and construction. So I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, I don't know if I know how to run a business in construction now. I mean, you don't, I don't know. You know how to do the things you know how to do, and you do those well. But every single day I learned something that, geez, I hadn't known about that before. But yeah, I don't know. It's definitely been a run.
So you're billing $1 million for a month for First Homes back in the heyday, and life is good.
Yep.
We talked about roadblocks, hurdles. Is there one coming?
Oh yeah, a couple. They kind of come in sets.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
I anticipate them. Like I enjoy the rest of the break. Okay, I caught my breath, but I'm always anticipating. Okay.
Unfortunately, I've gotten to the point where the minute I start to feel good, I get worried, But
Same.
back then I was naive enough that I didn't know to be worried. But yeah, end of 04, everything was, flying high, doing well. And then just before Christmas 2004, I fell asleep driving home. Just doing a model center amenity base for a builder out in LaBelle.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of these funky hand frame octagonal gazebo deals, and I didn't have time to do it. Didn't have anybody that knew how to do it. So I was breaking off doing my real job, and I'd go out there from like 3 o'clock in the afternoon till 10, 11 o'clock at night with a set of 3 or 4 guys, and had to get this thing up by his Christmas party. The only way I could do it was to build it on the ground and then fly it with a crane and set the posts under it, because it had a big cupola in the middle of it and stuff, and it was all conventional frame. And if I'd tried to do it 15 feet in the air, I'd never got it done. So I set it up about 2 feet off the ground on little stubby posts and framed the whole thing up, and then had a 50-ton crane fly it and kick posts under it. And we got done about 1 in the morning on the 22nd. And so I took off from LaBelle driving home and flipped the truck at about 120 miles an hour because I fell asleep. Apparently when I fell asleep on the gas. So I flipped that thing over. Let's see, I guess it would have been 2 westbound lanes, the median, 2 eastbound lanes, a water control structure, through a fence and up into a mobile home front yard.
Wow. I didn't know this. I don't remember this.
Yeah. So you and I weren't in touch a lot at that point. But yeah, I woke up when I started flipping, and I remember the truck was flipping, and I didn't have my seatbelt on, but it was just a bench seat. It was a loaner, an F-150 loaner truck I had from the dealer because mine was in for service. And I laid over on that seat and grabbed onto the passenger side of the seat. And every time that roof would hit the road, my shoulder would smash into the roof. And I remember thinking, well, where am I at? Because I was asleep when it started, so I didn't even know where I was, didn't know if I was alone, didn't know. So I went through that whole process, wife and kids with me, what's going on? Have I been drinking? How'd I get here? That whole process of what did I do to be in this mess? And realized, okay, no, I'm by myself. I remember where I'm coming from. No, I wasn't doing anything stupid. This is just, I guess I must have fallen asleep. And so then I went through the whole, is my life insurance paid up? What's going to happen to them if I don't live through this? And I realized, yeah, that's all good. They're taken care of. They'll be set, And that was the scary part, because then I was ready to die.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Then I was ready to die.
You were ready?
And I didn't mind. And that scared the hell out of me. I didn't want to die. I wasn't hoping I would die. But the moment I realized they're all good, they're taken care of, I was like, oh, all right. Well, I won't have to get up tomorrow morning.
Wow.
And I thought, what in the hell? What is that? I'm 25 years old. I got money in the bank. I live in a beautiful home. I got 4 kids. I don't have any problems. None. And it was a relief to think I wouldn't have to get up tomorrow morning.
Wow.
And so the truck stopped rolling, and I wasn't dead. And I couldn't find my phone. It had busted off my hip. Back then you had those big Nextel phones, the size of a brick. I couldn't find that. So I kicked the windshield out of the truck, and I was only about 3-4 miles from home. So I figured, well, I'll just run home. So I ran home at about 2:30 in the morning. That whole run down Palm Beach, I'm thinking, why do I not care if I die? What is going on? And I realized that way back at the point you talked about when you and I have a long conversation in the truck, from that point to this point, I've just had my ears pinned back trying to get out of the hole, just trying to make it, trying to not fall back far enough that you get eaten by the proverbial monster that's coming behind you. And for me, that was always defined by, were her and the kids going to be okay? Had I done enough that they would have what they needed and wouldn't end up in the position I'd seen my mother end up in, or, countless other people. And so I realized when my brain crossed off that if I die and they get my life insurance, then I've done that. At least to my young mind then, I felt I had. And so that means, okay, my job is done. There's nothing else I need to do. And I realized I had turned myself into literally a tool, not figuratively speaking, literally. That's just what I was. I was a means to an end to cause a certain thing to happen. And once that happened, I don't have any value. I don't have any reason for being, period. And so it scared the crap out of me. And the next 3-4 days, it was
Those are some deep thoughts for in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
Those are some heavy thoughts and some real hard conclusions you came to in a short amount of time.
Yep. So I turned the world on its ear. I've never been one to realize something and then sit and do nothing about it. So I ended up kind of step by step going through a whole process of why is this the way I feel and what do I do to change it? And I changed everything. I bought my partners out of the business. I hired a general manager. I backed off my hours. I repurposed what I was doing. I set up to take a whole lot more time for the family. I went and bought an RV. We went on a vacation to North Carolina that next summer. I took like a whole 2 weeks off. I thought I was going to melt or something because I had taken 2 hours off.
I can vibe with that. So our family takes off on Christmas time because that's when things kind of slow down. Mm-hmm. The first 2, maybe 3 Christmases we did that. For one, I didn't even want to go, right? Because to come back, it's like, okay, if I walk away, I'm walking into a hornet's nest when I come back. And then, bro, now I look forward to those times. Sure, they're special. But before, it would take me days, dude, to decompress. It would take me days, and I was not a happy person to be around. Yep.
But I was trying. And so I basically reimagined my whole business from me being the linchpin of the business to the business being able to function without me and give me an opportunity to, figure out what I wanted out of life and spend some time with my wife and kids and this and that.
I want you to hold your thought. What year was this? 2004?
End of 2004, early 05, yep.
2005. We had just built our new shop.
Yep.
10,000 square foot building. Had 100 some odd employees. I had my managers and stuff in place. I did what I knew how to do, and then I would copy what you were doing. That's the only 2 things. What's Jerome doing? Okay, that's what I'm gonna do. Back then, we were framing 30, 40, 50 houses a week at Adams Homes. You print out the MapQuest. Here's our jobs. I knew where all my jobs were.
Yep.
I knew where all my jobs were, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. And then even though I had people in place, I wouldn't just say, here, take this. Let me know if you need me. I was a really good micromanager. Like, nobody's as good as me. Nobody's going to watch it as close as me. So I just had my own appendages out farther. It was my eyes. Here, take my eyes. Yep. It was like this. And I didn't realize what I was doing. I was like, oh man, I made it. I got people in place, and until I tried to take some time off. So you got in a car wreck for your epiphany to come to. Mm-hmm. I tried to take some time off for a freaking weekend, bro. And I went to go out the door, and there's this ball attached to this chain to my ankle. Yeah. And then I came to the conclusion, Keith, you just built this thing. You just built this thing. You got all this money, but you don't have freedom. You don't have time. Yep. And so my response to back then was, okay, well, I just want out of it. In 2005, I sold my company to get my breathing room, to take some time off with my family, to live life. Yep. That was, so as you're talking about your road, I had a similar road. Yep. So, and it was just funny that it was around the same amount of time.
Well, I mean,
2004, 2005, right around that same time.
Yep. Yeah, it was.
When I sold my company, had the biggest check I've ever seen in my life. That didn't do anything to me. Like, the check didn't matter. Dude, when I took that Nextel phone off my hip and I laid it down in the office and I walked out the office, that was like a 20-ton weight. That little phone was like a weight, and I literally felt different. But you don't realize the weight you're under when you're in it. You just, all right, stack it on, I'll figure it out. Stack it on, I'll figure it out. I'll get through it. I'll do it.
Yep.
It was just funny how similar scenarios you and I had.
Yep.
Didn't even realize your story was like that.
Yep. So I revamped everything, hired a general manager, put things kind of sort of on, not on autopilot, but at least operating without intimate involvement from me on an hour by hour basis. Got into a number of other things. And simultaneously with that, all kind of finding a point of, where I could take a breath, then my whole marriage fell apart. And now all of a sudden, I'm end of 05 with wife's gone, kids are gone, got an 18-month-old son that I don't even really know because his whole life I was so busy that, I didn't even know which way was up. And now that's all gone, and I'm sitting out in a big house in the middle of nowhere with the business taking care of itself. So all this time I'd carved out to now spend with them, and they're not there. So now, late 2005, sitting there wondering, well, now what do I do with life? I've made all the money I'm ever going to need. I hadn't, but I thought I had. And I'm never going to have any more kids, never going to get married again, because to me, I had watched, my first wife had 2 older daughters. His father had been killed. And I knew how hard it was for me to be a good quality stepfather to them. And in my mind, there was no way anybody was ever going to do that for my kids. So I'm not going to put them through the compromise of whoever may whatever with them. So to me, life was just basically, I didn't know what to do. I was thoroughly lost. I had no reason to do anything that I did. No reason not to do anything. I had no have to, no drive, nothing. It was just like the whole world went immediately dead. Like somebody just unplugged the light from the wall. Because like I told you, everything I'd ever done was just to provide for that family and that future that I imagined, and then it was just gone. And so I bounced around. Fortunately, I had done a fair amount of real estate investment stuff with a couple of guys that were a whole lot older than me, and one of them, he saw it. He was intuitive enough to understand that, this wasn't something that I was just going to wake up the next morning and be okay. So that guy showed up every day, 6:00 in the morning.
He invested
brought
in
me
you.
coffee, said, okay, what are we doing today?
Wow.
And he was in his late 60s,
I know this guy.
and he just, what are we doing today? And at first, I remember being so hungover, riding in the passenger seat of the car, thinking, I don't want to go anywhere today. And I don't even know where we were going, but he would just go somewhere and he'd start talking. And then, kind of the business reality of things would kind of come back into frame, and I'd start firing on some level. And that went on for a couple of weeks, and I don't remember exactly what he said one day, but I think basically he just told me, look, this is going to be awful for 2 more years. It's going to take you 2 years to get over this. He said, but I promise you, you're going to get over it. And if you let everything fall apart while you're getting over it, then you're going to have a whole nother hill to climb. Or you can get back in the game now and just force yourself to do what needs to be done, even though you don't know why you're doing it. He said, I've been through this. It's terrible. He said, but you're going to survive it. So I had enough respect for him that I just kind of took him at his word. Like, okay, this is what it's going to be. It's going to suck, but I'm going to figure it out. And so I sat down at my desk, and this was right before you ended up coming back and helping me with those houses for a little while. And I sat there, and at that point we were on track for about 25 million that year. And I sat down and I said, okay. He told me also in that conversation, you got to pick a goal. You got to pick something that gives you a reason, because you've lost your reason.
Wow.
So find a way to find a reason. So I didn't know how to find one, because everything fundamental, family, kids, all that to me was just a big black hole. There's no way I could touch it.
Everything you and I have been built for.
Yep, was gone.
Was
so
gone.
For the only time in my life, I made the decision, okay, I'll just knock the business out of the park, because what else am I going to do? At least this way I can't hurt anybody. I don't want to go out and get twisted up with another girl and wreck her life or wreck my life or my kids' lives. So I've been horny as a bastard my whole life. So it was hard enough just to, not go out and screw up everybody's planet with my problems. So I just said, all right. So I sat down at my desk. Had a little house that I had rented for overflow office space over there in Lehigh. And I sat down at that desk in the bedroom and formulated a plan to go from 25 million a year to 100 million a year in 36 months. And I actually mapped it out, what it was going to take to do it, the projects, the type of projects, what we were going to do to get there. And I walked out into the dining room and said to Joe, I said, all right, I figured it out. He said, what's that? I said, well, we're going to hit 100 a month or 100 million a year by whatever it was, 2009. And he says, okay, let's go. And that was it. And so then I took everything I had and doubled down on every position I was in. At that point, I had basically no debt. I had a lot of cash, great credit, and was, just sitting in a position. So I went all in and set strategically, I don't know, probably 12 or 14 different things in motion to get going down that road, unwittingly at the worst time in Earth's history to ever go all in. I was going all in 06. But unbeknownst to most people, it had nothing to do with the fact that I'd made money or the space and time or the economy, or it was all about me. It was all just the position I was in and what I was trying to do to stay out of that ditch. And so I did that. And then we had our biggest month, December of 06. And then January 2nd or January 5th, I don't know, something like that, of 07, I laid off 86 guys at 147 employees at that point. And what I did not know behind the scenes was that First Homes had sold, as part of their sale to the national builder that bought them, they had an incentive contract to produce 3,600 units in the calendar month after their sale. So while the market was dying, we were pushing like we were on turbocharge, because they had no monetary reason to take their foot off the gas. They were incentivized by a huge additional pay piece to truck this thing through until they hit that calendar year from the sale. So we ran full tilt for the wall all the way through 06. And literally the minute they hit that goal, because contractually that's when the new owner was able to, because he couldn't hamstring them as long as he had this incentive contract in place. But the minute they hit that goal, he turned it off. So I went from doing 17 units a day to doing like 12 units a month, literally overnight. And so, I spent 2 years. I had just kind of gotten along that thread. I did meet a girl, got engaged, was planning on getting married, had kind of my personal life back on track, and found some unexpected life there. Never considered marrying an 18-year-old in my, previous black hole. But, and so got personal sorted out and back on track, and with, a light at the end of the tunnel, and then business just falls off a cliff. And, but that was 1,000 times easier than the other thing.
the family thing?
Oh yeah. I mean, I could lose everything today. You can take the business, sign it over to you and take the money in the bank and put me out there with my shoes and the shell on the driveway and I'll figure it out. Because I'd have a reason to. But when I lost the family, I had no reason to. And so it just, I think everybody looks at me in a lot of times and, they recognize those business changes because they're what's visible to the outside world, right? And they have a level of respect for what I've done or recovered from or whatnot from that standpoint. But the truth is, losing the business wasn't that big a deal. It's like you said, you put the phone down and I was like, okay, I don't have to do that anymore. It became hard after the business was gone and money was gone and credit was gone and everything was gone. And now I've got a family I got to feed again and I can't. And so then it's kind of like the cycle starts all over, now. But that was a challenge that was almost like, okay, good. I'm back. I understand this world. I know how to drive in this space. It's like, okay, these challenges I know what to do with. But at the same time, now you're fighting this other feeling of complete failure on a professional side, because like I just said, I made those choices to go in deliberately. It wasn't accidental or, just the course of business, so to speak. So it, from there, it took a lot longer to get back to functional, I guess, because there wasn't anything, there was no traction to be had here. You were making sandwiches, and
I bought a little restaurant just to
I know,
do something.
I know.
I bought a freaking little restaurant just to do something, brother.
I remember passing you on Buckingham riding an enduro motorcycle to go make sandwiches for the day, and I remember thinking, what the hell happened to us?
Something just to have a place to go and just to do something.
Yep. I think I came and bought a sandwich
because
one
there
day.
was nothing going on.
Nothing. Yeah, it was something.
You came up one time. You were driving to some old Cadillac limousine.
Yeah. I bought a 6-door funeral limo.
Only you didn't have a driver. You were the one driving it.
Driving it. Yep. Yeah, I remember that.
But even that, I bought that little restaurant just to do something. Even that, we weren't making any money, Jerome.
No.
But it gave me something to do.
Yeah.
My family was together.
Yeah.
My kids were learning how to work. They were learning how to communicate.
Sure.
There's friendships that I have from that place that I still have today.
Yep.
And even like when we came full circle and we started like getting back in construction, there's relationships I have from that little restaurant that I still have today in construction. So you never, like, from where I stand as a Christian, like providentially, you talked about, Joe, the right time in your life. Hey, let's get up, let's go do something. Like, I feel like God puts people in your life at the right time to, like, if you can't be strong for yourself, I'm going to give somebody that you can just, sometimes you just need somebody that, hey, just start walking, I'll follow you. I feel like Joe was that for you.
For sure.
Hey, just, where are we going? Get in the car, you drive, I'll follow you.
Yep.
I've had those times in my life.
Yeah, you need it when it shows up. But so I ended up traveling all over the country. Mississippi, New Orleans, ended up landing in North Dakota for a hot minute, and kind of.
You were in Mississippi, New Orleans, because they had a hurricane, Katrina, right?
Sort of.
So they're raising houses for code or something?
No, most of what I did out there was municipal stuff. We got tied up with a contractor that basically, just like the government always does, they put a bunch of money somewhere when there's a disaster, and then everybody figures out what they want to do with that money. What I was doing wasn't really disaster related. It was related to the money that came in because of the disaster. But I built a sheriff's station, a fire training facility, a couple of schools, couple of parks. It was all municipal buildings and stuff like that.
And which sounds like it'd be profitable, but you told me you were making.
Oh, it was nothing. I mean, I was working the GC that was doing the work, we were basically playing a almost inclusive turnkey sub for what he was selling. So we were doing the site work, we were doing the foundations, we were doing the vertical work, we're doing basically everything other than the MEP trades. But I mean, we were doing it at a rate that was extremely cheap to begin with, and then the corrupt nature of New Orleans, you got paid sometimes. So I mean, I was making less than I made when you and me were working together in '97. So it was, it was bread and beans kind of money, not anything.
But just to recap, there was nothing here going on in Florida.
Nothing.
So you had to adapt.
Yep.
So you pick up and go to New Orleans.
Yep.
You were there for what, 3-4 years?
No, I was only there for a little over a year. Did a lot in a short period of time, but was there for a little over a year and hated it just because of the corrupt nature of it. I was used to back here. We're fortunately here, for the most part, it's based on a lot of pretty good-hearted, well-intentioned, honest people. Obviously you got your crooks everywhere, but my career, I've never really had to chase money. Once in a while, but for the most part, I've been blessed to have dealt with an honest group of people that never really had to worry about it. But you got out there, I mean, it was horrible. I mean, I think we did, to our book of business, maybe $800,000 or $900,000 worth of business over the year I was there, and I think $250,000 of it we never did collect. So I mean, it was literally just survival. So North Dakota was hopping because of the oil boom. So I went out there and.
Did you know anybody out there? Like, what was that? You said, okay.
Nope, heard about it. Drove out there, took a look at what was going on. Stopped by it was weird because it was the only place building anything new in the country. So it looked like a lot. But like compared to what we'd been doing before, it was absolutely nothing. I mean, a big builder out there was building 100 units a year. Well, you and I had been building 100 units in 2 weeks. We were stamping out 100 units. So the volume was very different. But out there it was all full frame houses. You're coming off of a basement foundation, and so everything from there up was wood. There's a lot more framing per unit than there was here. So I sold a framing and siding contract to the biggest builder in that little town, and took about a dozen guys out there. So that was when I left here completely and sold everything I had here and moved out. And then on the way out there, I flipped my truck again.
I remember this one.
And so by the time I actually showed up, had $8,000 in a briefcase and 12 guys with nowhere to live. That was tough for the first couple of months.
But listen, like looking back and reminiscing, it sounds like you're laughing. But when you have no choice, when there's no room to go, only forward, you figure it out.
Yeah, you have to.
And the fact that 12 freaking guys followed you says something about you and your character. You follow me? The fact that you're able to get some guys together, and that they had faith in you to follow you out there, and looking back now, is like, man, I would have talked those guys out of following me. Like, based on what I know now, they should not have followed me.
Well, except for the fact that there was nothing for them here either. They were in the same. They were in a different version of the exact same boat. I was sitting in the captain's seat. They were sitting on the jump seat, but it was still the same boat.
So it was like, all right, guys, we got nothing to lose. Let's get it.
Yep. So
I remember you talking about when you went out there, and if you need to take a break, we can. But when you went out there, you said it was pretty, like the people out there were pretty isolationist. They weren't keen on outside people. So you had that. It was hurdle to break down.
I mean, you had the guys out there. You had everybody swarming in from all over the country, doing a horrible job for the most part. Because let's face it, nobody that was established and knew what they were doing was going to go out there. But everybody that was starving and trying to survive was going.
Understood.
And for the most part, you talked about the Amish people earlier. The people that are there static all the time have a large piece of that Amish influence
Understood.
Very good operators, very high quality, very honesty and integrity based, And so for honest, fair reasons, they're looking at all these scabs flying into town going, oh no, what kind of mess is this? And so we had that to overcome. It didn't take long, fortunately, because I mean, I dug in with the group of guys we had. We worked hard. We did a good job. And so then we kind of washed off that guy from out of town look pretty quick. But because there were so many people swarming out there, the pay rates weren't great. I mean, we were working for rates out there that I never would have worked for back here, but it was, at least it was, it was survival type stuff. So that went okay for a bit, but the seasons out there are so rough that even if you made good money for 8 months out of the year, you're going to lose it for the other 4 months out of the year. And you're going to basically be fucking break even. It's just like, you cannot do anything efficiently in the winter out there. You can function. We did, but not to a level of profitability.
So what was the first winter like for you guys out there?
It was brutal. I mean,
did you work during the winter?
Yeah.
I knew you did. Listen,
yeah,
freaking North Dakota. Nothing should be outside. But I knew you would be. I knew you tried to figure something out. So you're trying to work during the winter. Describe me that first winter you tried to work. What happened?
Well, you had to break your studs out of the unit with a sledgehammer because they were frozen together. You probably don't know this, but frozen wood splits about 14 times easier than wood that's not frozen. So, I mean, the hardest thing is keeping your fingers warm. I mean, you've worked enough with me to know how fast I can move on a framing job. So me staying warm wasn't really that difficult. In fact, I worked most of the time 0, 5, 10 degrees just in pants and a long sleeve t-shirt, and that was it. Because if you wear too many clothes, you can't frame. How are you going to reach your tool belt in a pillow jacket? And that didn't work. And so I would just move fast enough to stay warm enough to go. But you can't keep your hands warm to save your life. Forget it. So it was, and you can't, there's ice on everything. So you're slipping on everything. The trucks won't start. The compressors won't start. So you got to start the compressors in the shop, put them in the truck running. Don't turn them off all day long or they won't restart. Condensation in your air lines freezes up, and then your guns won't fire because you got ice in your air hose. I mean, just the volume of things that, so you end up looking back at the end of the day and you put up 2 walls when you should have put up the whole house, and you're like, oh, just come on. But you don't have a choice. You got to pack it all up, go put it back in the shop, warm it all back up, and get ready to go for tomorrow. And so, yeah, it was, like I said, there was just no traction to be made. So we did that. I got there. I went up there briefly prior to this, but got there full tilt February of 2012. And by summer of 2013, realized I can't go through another winter, the 13-14 winter, if I go through that without something else going on. Because by that time, we'd built back up to 35, 40 guys because we were doing a couple big apartment projects and different stuff. And there was no way I could carry that staff through the 13-14 winter. So I went down to Central Texas and found an area there that was doing pretty well around Austin and figured, okay, I'll start a southern division here and pull the staff out of North Dakota during the winter down to Texas and operate here, which sounds good, but practically is not terribly effective. Plus, I still didn't have any money. It was back to being able to put gas in the truck without having to worry about it, but I didn't have any money. And so I took a contract to build a house behind the Hooters on Fort Myers Beach. In Christmas break of 2013. So I moved to Central Texas in the middle of 13 to set up for the winter. Was still operating and running everything in North Dakota, but then realized I simply didn't have enough money to get Central Texas up and on its feet in time for the winter. So I took that contract down here really out of desperation. I just didn't know what to do. It was a $37,000 framing contract. It wasn't going to change the world by any means. Tell me what you'd frame a 5,000 square foot full frame 3-story on Fort Myers Beach for today. It's not $37,000.
No, especially if I'm in Texas.
So
You should have said, call my buddy Keith. He's got 7 kids.
yeah,
And he lives right down the road.
yeah.
You
But
should have
even,
did for me like I did for you when First
even
Homes
then,
called. Call my buddy Jerome.
You'd have told them $80,000, and they'd have called me back.
All right,
But
that's fair. Okay,
and you should have. You were right, not me.
you could at least give me the option. I
So-
would have framed it for you, and I would just give you a kickback. You could have stayed over there. Call me
Yeah.
once in a while.
Yeah.
Call me
probably
once in a
should.
while.
Probably should. But so we came down and did that, and I realized while I was doing that, I've got a whole lot more contacts here than I do in Central Texas.
Hmm.
So I walked into Brooks and Freund just to say hi to an old project manager there that I knew. I was in shorts and flip flops, and it was like a Friday afternoon. I hadn't even started working yet, and Richard called down on the speakerphone, just screaming at him. And I didn't know what they were talking about. I'm just sitting there quietly, not wanting to interrupt the conversation. And Jack says, I got a goofy looking curly haired framer here in my office right now if you want to talk to him. Richard gets quiet, which doesn't happen real often. He says, who? Jack says, Jerome. Tell that mother, get up to my office. So I went upstairs and basically pushed a spreadsheet across the table and said, you want it, it's here. Just come get it. And so he had a framer that was failing. They had a multi-building subdivision down in Naples, and he said, how many guys you got in the state, that can do this? He's like, I need these trusses flown on Monday. And it was actually a Thursday, not a Friday. And I said, I got enough. Is you sure? I said, yeah, I got enough. I didn't have any, Keith. I didn't have a truck. I didn't have tools. I had nothing here on that Thursday. And we flew 10,000 feet of trusses on Monday morning.
Again, adapt and figure it out.
I put guys on the road the minute I walked out of the office. They showed up, hadn't slept.
Wow.
It was a rowdy truss set.
Wow.
And that was, at that point, I had no idea what safety was, no idea what
none of us
any
did,
of that.
because
We
when you
had
and I were framing together, we didn't do safety.
Nah,
Shirts off, just get it done.
we showed up for that 12,000 square foot truss set with no fall protection, no hard hats, no pants, no boots, nothing. And they had such a bad run that they
didn't care.
They nodded for a minute. Then I got a call into the office, and they said, look, I really appreciate you getting them dresses set, but you guys are going to have to tune this up. So we did. And, but that was another rough space, because now I had North Dakota gone. I had a house with 3 young kids and a young wife in Texas and operations here. And now I was literally spread out in 3 different places across the country and still no money. Figuring out when to fly, because the ticket was $50 cheaper, mattered. It wasn't a luxury thing. It was I don't know, can I afford to get there on the money I'm going to get on the Thursday after I get there, and then can I get home? And so it was, fortunately, we were able to exit out of North Dakota at the right time before oil really fell apart up there. So that was providential, because that wasn't planned. We got out of all of the things we had gotten into up there, and were able to sell out everything and come out with our pants on, so to speak. And so then I was stretched between Central Texas and here till about, I don't know what it was, end of 16, early 17, and then brought somebody in to manage things here. Got things here kind of stabilized and operating and doing what they needed to do. And then from there to the end of 22, I focused in Central Texas and ran that. And
Even that, the guy that was managing that for you, I think I know who we're talking about. He was doing his own thing for a while.
mm-hmm.
And you even like that, seeing an opportunity for both of you,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of like looking down the road, like you tried to do with me way back when this first conversation first started, like
Mm-hmm.
see a vision, adapt. A 2008 happens that slammed everyone. Okay, well, I got to reset. Okay, now what do we do? Well, we're gonna like just to be able to keep moving and keep adapting. When it comes to business,
it's funny. You just touched on two things that kind of bring something to mind. All of the success I've ever had, I can attribute simply to the fact that I did what I thought was the right thing to do because I thought it was best for me and the other person in the equation. I can honestly say I never attempted to do something because it's what was best for me. If it wasn't a win for you and me both, I'm not going to do it. You and I have talked about jobs over the years. So, we've never competed over a job. I've never lost a job to you. You've never lost one to me. If it came down to that, we talked and whatever, it went the way it needed to go. But
there have been times where I needed that job and you've cut it loose, and vice versa. There's been times that Keith, I could really use this one and cut it loose. So
exactly. But I mean, what's funny is every opportunity I look back on and see that didn't happen, that could have happened, is almost always based on a element of distrust that unfortunately exists because of society and life and the way we're wired. That, man, if it didn't, I mean, if you and me 20 some years ago hadn't had that anxiety of well, what if this does go wrong, or is this a good idea, or isn't it? That other guy that got involved with me that never trusted what he was involved in, if he had, or that could have gone. I mean, when I came back here, I quadrupled the size of the business. He could have done that every single year he was at the desk.
Understood.
But is it going to benefit me question that humanly exists in everyone's mind, I always look back and see that as why the thing never went where it really could have gone. And I'm not saying I don't do it. Yeah, I look out for me too. But I think the rare occasions where things actually work on a massive level, or when a few different individuals with different massive skill sets actually are able to move past what is that guy going to do or not do for me, and actually get the one for all mindset truly in play, is when I think the wheels absolutely just come off of a thing and it flies. But unfortunately, I look at our industry, 2/3 of the management effort put into anything we do is to keep the other guy, whoever it might be, from screwing me.
You're right.
And if that energy was reversed into how do we do it better, faster, more profitably, holy crap, dude.
You're right.
I gotta pee.
Let's take a break. Technology, we back.
Yeah, so anyway, I was just, it's always disappointed me the way that
human nature
and distrust controls the game more than the endeavor and the goal to make it better. And invariably, it's what pushes inflation. It's what pushes cost of living. It's what pushes everything. I mean, how many things do we do that make absolutely no sense just to protect us from the other guy?
Look how the thickness of the contracts we sign have evolved since we started. It's so stupid, dude. It's like you try to write in every possible way someone can get a leg up on someone else. And really, if I need to sign this, then why are we even working together? Like if we really need this, then why are we even in the same room together?
Yep. No,
that's the world in which we live in.
I know. It's insane. And I mean, in all those contracts I've ever signed, I've never gone to court. I've never not finished a job.
Same.
I've never had money held. I've never not gotten my retainage. I've never, little tiny bits of this or that or whatever, of course, but in any kind of way that contract ever could have been enforced, it never was. But we spend all that money and all that time and energy being concerned about it and drafting it, and it's just insane. So, I don't know. My goal at the moment is to try to maneuver long term into a space where none of that matters. and create a relationship-based contracting method where instead of all of that waste being expended where it is, that waste is turned into fuel. And I think if that's accomplished, you have a model that can't be competed with.
And that's something you're working on right now.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm doing.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because it makes me sick. Because I mean, you see it all the day. The amount of money that either one of us can go out there and charge somebody for something sometimes is embarrassing.
Mm.
You shouldn't be able to do that, but you can, because so few people do it.
Mm-hmm.
So few people know how to do it, and the ones who do it and know how to do it don't have the credentials or the size or the financial requirements or what have you to be able to do it. So that you look at, not to get too political, but you look at the way that all the regulatory things exist to protect things that are government backed from being exploited. And all it really does is double the cost of the endeavor, because you've precluded anyone from using anyone who should be used and would be efficient, because they're not big enough or fancy enough. I'm always looking for the guy that was you or me 30 years ago. That's the guy you want. I don't want the guy with the big fancy sign on the side of the road or the 10,000 square foot building. I want the guy with the truck with no name on it, but the right guy in that truck. So
That's one thing I've always kind of like prided myself in. The road just came down.
mm-hmm.
I've lived here forever. People have a certain perception of us. When they find out I live down a dirt road and I operate out of my barn, I love that, because it goes against what you're talking about.
Yep.
I love that.
Yep.
Like, look at a person's character, look at a person's track record, what they've accomplished, and all the other stuff is just BS.
Well, but your stability, because you have that small base, is so much broader than the stability of the guy that looks like he's 400 times the size that you are, because you're insulated from whatever it is. And so there's a whole lot to that.
Well, you started in Florida, and we took a little track around up and then over, and now we're back in Florida again. Is there any other hurdles or things in your Ironman life journey you want to talk about? Are we almost to the finish line?
Well, I don't know. I think we're almost to the start line.
Wow, that's sad.
Though I don't mean from a negative standpoint. I mean, to me, what I've done so far was to get to where I could do what I wanted to do.
Yeah, so you and I had a conversation the other day, and you talked about this burden that you've been carrying for like 15 years that you're just recently released of. Is that where you're getting at? Is that a part of it?
Not sure exactly what you're referring to, possibly.
You got a tax burden on you for 15 plus years, and you're talking about...
No, I mean, that was just one of the impediments from the fall apart of years ago. But what I'm referring to at the moment, I mean, back in 2002, my two older brothers, my younger brother, myself were teamed up together. We had 4 crews at that time.
Yeah.
We ran 4 crews. We built 4 houses a day. We had 4 pickup trucks, no office, no secretary, no nothing, no waste, no exposure. Everything was about as tight as it could possibly be. And it was almost like going to the playground every day, because it was like when you and I were working together. Yeah, we were working hard, but we were assing around and cutting up the entire day. I mean, there was no stress associated with what you and I were doing. We were framing those little 2-story houses around Lehigh, and it was a game. And at that point, it was just a little bit bigger version of the same thing. Everybody giving each other crap for who had the better day, or who did whatever, and we were just having fun and doing it. And I mentioned a little bit ago about the distrust or the looking back at the things that could have been. And I look back to that point in time. If your dad gave you the advice when I suggested us hooking up, relative to being unequally yoked and it being a bad idea, I respectfully disagree with him. I think he was wrong. Not that partnerships are a great idea, but I think you and I uniquely would have been equally yoked. I think we both had.
Listen, brother, I'm like just you and I sitting here talking. I trust you with my life. Like, not saying that we should have or shouldn't have.
Sure.
But I would have given you everything I got, and I know you would have, and I know we wouldn't. When we tag teamed up, we could have just shook hands and like, let's rock and roll with this. We wouldn't have needed a lawyer in the room. We just figure it out.
We'd have set the world on fire. And what I mean is, my brothers and I had that same opportunity. But to your dad's point, we weren't equally yoked. I was gonna outpull, and the cart was gonna go sideways. And they never had the desire, for whatever reason, to pull hard enough or go fast enough or try hard enough. And so invariably that spun out of control, and we parted ways and they all went and did their different things. But to now, my sons are just now getting to the age where they're involved and they're
Good
coming on. And so to me, the challenge becomes, how do you give them the have to that you had that they don't have? Because, there's not that proverbial monster nipping at their heels. They know they can always come home and go to bed at my house, but the opportunity to try to find a non-fear oriented, productive way to steer that capability and that strength and get it going in a direction that makes sense, and actually multiplex something into something other than all of the family businesses that fail. So in my opinion, I don't have a path. It's never been about me. I don't, I would have worked for my dad till I died and would have been happy doing it, and so my goal has always been to not repeat the mistakes that were made behind me, to create a world where my kids had the ability to not work for me, but take what I've done and multiplex it into the next thing, whatever they want it to be. And it doesn't even have to be the industry that we've lived in.
Right.
I don't care what they do. I mean, your
Right.
son runs a steel operation, does a great job of doing it, seems happy doing it. Good for him. My wife asked me a couple of times, well, that's all great, but what about the girls? I said, look, it doesn't make any difference. They can do whatever they want to do. Just come in with, figure out what you want to do, and then we'll back that.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any difference. So, yeah, I feel like I'm almost to the start line.
I'm a little bit ahead of you in this regard.
Mm-hmm.
Your kids are coming on board.
Yep.
So out of our 7 children and I don't know how many in-laws, so my son Terry, he's the framing company. And my boys, it's funny because we have these perceptions. Like I had a perception of you
Sure.
of me, but let someone speak for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, I had a conversation with my boys. They had a perception, a narrative in their own head without dad's words coming out. And we were able to have a conversation. For some reason, they thought that in order for me to respect them as men, they had to go the same road that I went. They had to start from zero.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, hey, listen, like everybody's dealt different set of cards. I started from zero, but you have this mechanism in place.
Mm-hmm.
And just because you take this mechanism that's in place, and listen, I got the work ethic, but your daddy ain't that smart. Like I just copy other people. but you guys have the work ethic, and plus you're really smart. So if you just take what Daddy started and built off of that, that doesn't make you any less of a man. Like,
No,
take the cards you dealt and run with it, brother.
for sure.
And it just helped them with that. Well, Dad won't respect me unless I start from zero. Who said you got why? Who said you had to start from zero? And why would you ever want to start from zero? So
Wow.
my son Terry, he runs the framing. You mentioned Thomas, the steel.
Yep.
My daughter Lily, she does the bookkeeping stuff for take pressure off my wife. Does the bookkeeping. My son-in-law Austin does all my estimating. My son-in-law Michael here, he started that estimating software. He built the program for me, and now he's doing this podcast thing with me. So just
Yep.
we have a little property that we do wedding venues. One of my daughter and daughter-in-law run. So just like you said, whatever your kids want to do, whatever they're built for,
Right.
to be able to say, okay, let's make a little family operation on this, throw some gasoline on it, and like go with it. I feel like there's something to be said for the family unit and keeping that family unit strong.
For sure.
Whoever said we had to fracture off and start over again?
Well, it's all when, you go to that distrust and competition mentality versus the true family mentality where it really is everybody backing everybody up. I mean, it's a totally different mode of operation. And I mean, I've given my kids over the years, the example of the parable of the talents along the thread of what you were saying about starting from zero, because look, you're given the talents you're given the basis you're given. Now, how you manage that is the definition of who you are.
Yes, sir.
Not whether you were given anything to start with or not. Doesn't make any difference. I would have sure as hell liked to start with something, And in a way, I did.
You did. Your dad.
If I had
background,
if I hadn't been taught what I was taught and been given the access and the information that I was as a young man, I wouldn't be where I am by any means. If I look at what my dad was given a generation back, he was in the projects in Detroit with an immigrant father, and my grandfather didn't even have a mother, and his father was jumping trains, and so if you look at it generation by generation, there's no question it's a vertical trend. But at some point, somebody's gonna decide to do something for real, and so
my kids, you and me, our motivation was our bills are behind us. I got to keep pushing.
Yep.
My children work hard, bro.
Yeah.
They work hard. But their motivation is their last name.
Mm-hmm.
Their motivation is Keith Vance is my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a better motivation than Bill's. Like they respect what I started, and they want to keep going with that. So that's their something your kids can build off of.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Look at everything my daddy went through. He figured it out. This ain't like when he's dead and gone, I'm gonna keep on figuring out like what built my daddy. I'm gonna keep going with that. And we never really do figure it out. Like life happens, and you just adapt and you keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, I think more than anything though, they just want to know that you care what they're doing. Whether they're doing it perfectly or good enough or not is certainly an element. But I think the biggest thing you can give your kids is them just being aware that you're paying attention and you care what happens to them. I think the worst thing you can do as a parent is become absorbed in yourself to the degree that you're still looking at you and you're not looking at them, because they know when you are and when you aren't. And when they understand that you got them and you see them, then it gives them that true confidence that there's somebody there. And again, it's that lack of fear, it's that lack of competition that I think breeds the best operators. You and I might have been the most motivated, certainly weren't the best.
No.
There's a million things I could have done different or better or whatever, but so it's a balancing, figure out the balance. How do you not give them so much that they kill themselves with it, and how do you give them enough that they can actually make something out of it? And I think at the end of the day, it really boils down to a personal decision. Every human being is going to make their decision where their life's going to wind up. Can't force it.
I just had a thought. I asked you, we talked a couple of days ago, and we'll wind this thing down. You got to go do some paddle boarding. My family's waiting at the beach for me. But I asked you, do you still feel like that 20-year-old kid that's still trying to make it, or do you feel like you have made it? And you said, well, you related it to your family. Mm-hmm. You related to not monetary stuff, but family. Mm-hmm. And I been thinking about that all week. And how I know I'll have made it is if on my deathbed, everyone that I love can be in the room with me, and they want to be in the room together. Like, they don't have to squash their beef between each other out of respect for Dad. Like, everybody loves each other, and they're like, we can all be in the same room and just have like unconditional love. Some families don't have that. You know what I mean?
No, and I hope that for both of us that's able to be the case. But in my experience, you have to accept the fact that people are going to be people. And we both have 7 kids. And I hope and pray that at the end of the day, all 7 of them make the best choice or the right choice or the good choice. And that, euphoric reality is able to be your end. But when human beings make bad choices or make choices for the wrong reasons, and it foils that perfect picture, it's not a definition of your success or failure. Mm. The introspective, arrogant version of each of us wants to be able to solve every problem, own every mistake, put every problem on our back and fix it. That's the dad in us. Mm. But your kids are human beings. They're individuals. They're going to make the choices they're going to make. And if they make the wrong choice, in my opinion, it's not a definition of what you did right or wrong. You did the same thing for all 7 of your kids. They're not all the same.
No.
They all make different choices. They all make different decisions. Good and bad things are going to happen. And I think when you have a lot of kids, if you don't understand that, you will hurt them all, because one of them makes a bad choice every single day. You may not happen to hear about it, but at some point, somebody makes a negative enough choice or decision that you do find out, and it impacts you. And when you allow that to define you, or to say to you whether you did or did not do what you should have done arrogantly, now it compromises you, and you in turn compromise the other 6 who didn't make a bad decision, because you're trying to be the martyr or responsible for the individual's bad choice. And I think I kind of figured that out when I was going through my divorce, and I made a rather vicious comment about my ex-wife to my CPA. And he just kind of looked sad. He said, "Don't say stuff like that." I said, "Why?" He said, "Jerome," he said, "the only way I can tell you," he says, "good people make bad choices sometimes." And he said, "You can decide to make their bad choice who they are, or you can decide to try to be the reason that they made that bad choice." He said, "Sometimes you just have to accept that somebody made a bad choice. View the bad choice for what it is, accept it for what it is, and let it go. Because if you don't realize that good people are going to make bad choices from time to time, then you always try to find the reason why they did it. And the arrogant side of you will always try to explain that it was because of you, or that you could have done something to prevent it." He said, "At the end of the day, nobody can stop you from walking out this door and doing whatever you're going to do. And we impact each other, but we're not responsible for the choices one another make." And it didn't really make a lot of sense to me when he said it, because I was mad, but I've thought about it over the years. And I think as a father, you got to keep yourself straight up and down, and keep your eyes down range, and make sure that you're fundamentally focused on what you need to be focused on, and accept the fact that, you know what, as much as I love them and as much as I care, sometimes they're going to goof up, and they may goof up in a fashion that's irrecoverable. And I hope that never happens for you or me or anybody, but I just think I watched my parents, I've watched other parents over the years be defined by the poor choices their children made, and seen the detrimental effects on their other children because they let their children's bad choices define who they were. And it can obviously happen the other way around too. You make a bad choice, your kids think it's their fault because they didn't do something that you wanted them to do or whatever. And there's a all for one and one for all mentality that's extremely positive, but there needs to be some individuality left in there where everyone's allowed to succeed and fail on their own and know they have the support of the whole without defining the whole by the worst moment of your life. And so I don't know.
That's good. Thank you. I'm gonna digest that for a while. There was a lot there, and it hit close to home. I like to control everything, including relationships.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap this thing up?
No, I don't think so. Appreciate you having me on. It's fun.
The last thought I had was, thank you, man. Thank you for I'm glad we didn't Zoom this thing. It was selfish. I wanted to look you in the eye. I want to sit down with my buddy and just reminisce for a while. So this was kind of selfish for me, but King David, I forget where it was at, but it said in scripture that there was a day that kings went forth to battle with their men, and there was this one day that David decided not to go to battle. So it's implied that he wasn't where he was supposed to be. It's implied that he became, I made it, I reached it. And then, he watches Bathsheba take a bath, and we see all that, how that spirals out of control. That complacency, that's what I struggle with. It was so easy when you and I were working together. I get up early in the morning when it's dark. I work my tail off until it's dark. I did what I was supposed to do. At 50, my role's different.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to go to battle every day, Jerome. I can stay home in my kingdom. You talk about balance and relationships and all that kind of stuff. My balance is fighting complacency every day. What am I supposed to be doing? What did I delegate that's not mine to handle anymore? And so just where I'm at now, that's my main thought, main mode of operation where I live.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Life is kind of easy compared to before.
Sure.
But there's, my bills don't make me get out of bed anymore.
Right.
But I still got to get up out of bed and do my thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's where I'm just kind of trying to find my balance in life. So I feel like you're probably in that same boat.
A little different, but I know what you mean. Yeah. For me, it's more of trying to find the balance of how much is too much and how much is enough, because I tend to take on more than maybe is intelligent from time to time, and I with all the bouncing around I've done. You've been in the same place for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
You've been here, you're established, you're set. I'm living in a rental at the moment. I don't even have my ass firmly planted quite yet. So there's still a lot of stabilization that I need to do. But for me, it's more, finding the balance of how much to take on at a time to have any semblance of a productive or functional life that's not, just good for me, but good for the people around me and whatever. So
you'll figure it out.
Beat goes on.
So are you going to train for another Ironman?
Yep. Waiting on this left knee to get back to the point where I can run on it again. My 13-year-old asked me the other day if I'd do one with him when he was 18. You're not allowed to do it till you're 18. So
you can do it in 5 years?
5 years out. So I'll do some stuff between now and then. Don't know that I'll do another full Ironman until that, just because I watched my dad in his triathlon career go really, really intense, nonstop for a long time and beat himself up. I think there's a balance in fitness to what's healthy for you and what you may be driven to do purely out of competition. And I don't have any desire to run myself into a point where I can't do anything because I beat you.
That's against the point.
What did that accomplish?
The whole point of fitness.
You win today. Go for it. Good for you. I'm happy for
the whole
you.
point of the whole point of fitness journey is to have some longevity, so you can do the things you love as long as you love, not to beat somebody else.
I got a 3-year-old, and I look at him and I'm like, what's he gonna want to do when he's 18? Well, that's a long way away.
When you we'll close it down, but I'm gonna put myself out there. In 5 years, and when you get ready to do that Ironman, keep me in mind.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'd like to do. I'd be 55.
Yep.
And I think you need to challenge yourself every once in a while.
Absolutely.
So, and listen, let me go out first. That way, when you get about a half mile, you see me struggling, just
you'll be fine.
give me a hand. Like swim with me. Swim with me.
You'll be fine. Swimming's. Put on a wetsuit and paddle. You'll be good.
All right, brother, let's get out of here. Thank you.